We're in a competition. I don't ever lose sight of that. We're in a competition, not just with the other 49 states, but we're in a worldwide competition, a global competition. And today we're winning it, and we're winning it rather powerfully. So anyway, I feel pretty lucky to be standing here on Friday the 13th. Receiving what I consider to be a great award and a pat on the back, an accolade. But I don't get confused that I'm not accepting this for me. I'm accepting this for all the men and women on the Brownsville Economic Development Corporation, in our Economic Development Office in Austin, and men and women across this state that get up every day and go to work. They risk their capital in the pursuit of economic rewards. And what we've created in the state of Texas is a great model. And our state is full of those bold entrepreneurs who, with the leaders in Austin, Texas, I realize and greatly respect that government doesn't create any jobs. Government creates the environment so that those of you who are job creators can feel comfortable that you can risk your capital knowing you're going to have a good return, chance to get a return on that investment, and you create the jobs. It's for all of you that I accept this award today, David, I'm telling people on a regular basis, you ought to get down on your knees every day and thank God you're living in Texas. Amen. I was in California last week and made that statement that they ought to wish they were in Texas. And there were a lot of heads doing this. And I actually, no matter where I go, and Jason, thank you for reminding me how blessed I am to have a wonderful family, and my wife who travels and is a very, very active economic development person for Texas. Matter of fact, she was in Atlanta yesterday, and she's traveled to a substantial number of destinations to promote Texas business, to recruit businesses to Texas. And when you're telling folks about what the environment is in this state, about the low taxes, about the fair and predictable regulatory climate, about the legal system that doesn't allow for oversuing in this state, and their eyes start lighting up. And I was afraid there were going to be some people trying to stow away with me in my baggage coming back from California, because bless their hearts, they have. It is the most beautiful place in the world. I mean, in August and on that West Coast, I think it was 65 degrees and just a beautiful place. I said, how can you screw up a place this bad where people will move away from that beautiful climate out there? But they've managed to do it. And I don't like, frankly, I don't want California to have bad economic prospects, bad economic luck, whatever you want to refer to it. I want that state to be a powerful economic engine. They're too important to the American economy overall. I want them to be a competitor for us. That's one of the reasons I clash with Washington, D.C. on a regular basis about this one-size-fits-all concept for our country, and we don't let the states compete against each other. I happen to believe that's how you get stronger. Now, it's uncomfortable. Every one of you who have been in a competition, whether it was in a athletic competition and an academic competition, or whether you were playing checkers, it's uncomfortable when somebody is getting the best of you. But that's how you become stronger. You change your strategy. You work harder. And that's how the states, I think, should be allowed to pursue the different avenues and find their own areas to really excel in and to focus on those. And I never get tired of telling people about the job-friendly environment that has been created in this state, where and I don't, I don't sugarcoat the story that everything that goes on in the state of Texas is all sunshine and blue skies. We have our challenges. You can't be the #1 exporting state in the country and not be impacted by this global recession that has come upon the country and this world over the last 18 to 24 months in particular. You can't have the #1 trading partner that you have in the world with the difficulties that Mexico are facing and not be impacted economically. The individuals who have lost jobs during this. Every person who wants a job in Texas and doesn't have one. My goal is to continue to create an environment in this state where those people can find re-employment. And there is no better state, I don't think there's a better state to be living in to be unemployed from the standpoint of your ability to find a job. And it's thanks to the strength of our economy. We're about 1 point below the national average in unemployment. But that, and that's good. We're beating the average. But the fact is, every one of those numbers represents a family who has a real challenge in front of them. We added 166,000 new jobs since from January through June in this state, almost twice as many as the next closest state. 14,000 new jobs in June. When you throw in the facts that David was talking about, that we're the #1 exporting state, we created more jobs during the decade of the 2000s by a large factor than the other. And in 2008, we created more jobs in Texas than the rest of the country combined. That's the power of what's going on in this state. And CNBC just last month declared that Texas is the nation's best state for business. And again, the credit goes to the men and women of the state, those people who are willing to risk their capital. But I do, you all are represented by Senator Eddie Lucio and Eddie's son, and they both really understand very well the importance of creating an environment so that individuals can risk their capital. And the members of the legislature get a lot of credit for this. I tell folks, I said, we don't agree on everything. That's the reason. I mean, my wife and I don't agree on everything. So the idea that we go to Austin for that short period of time every other year, 140 days every other year, and we conduct a lot of business. And there's a lot of smoke and sometimes a little spark and a fire will flare up from our discussions and what have you. But at the end of the day, we're all Texans. And we realize that creating the environment for the business community to succeed is our most important job. And we've done it with 4 pretty simple principles. Principle #1 is don't spend all the money. Some people say that's Aggie economics. Don't spend all the money, okay? And back in 2009, we saw the storm clouds approaching of this international economic crisis. We saw it as Washington was dealing with the meltdown of the economy, and they passed this huge, what they call the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, and we started seeing the current administration spending huge amounts of money with these stimulus programs, and the economy was very troubled. And our members of the legislature recognized that for what it was. And there were a lot of people that came forward and said, oh, let's go spend the money in the rainy day fund. There's upwards of $8 billion in that fund. And we said no. And the members of the legislature recognized and said, no, those are some great ideas you've got, but we may really need this down the road and in a real stormy, rainy period of time for our state. So they did not spend all the money. They adhered to that #1 principle of governing. Second principle is to have a tax and a regulatory policy that is fair, that has as light a burden on the job creators as we can have, and still deliver the services that people desire, and have a predictable regulatory climate. We announced yesterday that Caterpillar had announced the second major move for that company. You remember back in 2008 they announced they were going to move their engine manufacturing, all engine manufacturing in the world for Caterpillar was moving to Seguin, Texas. Huge economic impact of capital infusion and jobs. Yesterday, Caterpillar announced that they're going to move all of their hydraulic manufacturing to Victoria, Texas. Upwards of 500 jobs. They did not come because there was a question of whether or not the regulatory climate was going to be predictable in this state. They knew that. The third principle is to have a legal system in place that does not allow for oversuing. You all understand that as well as any area of the state. Back in 2003, when we passed that tort reform and you all were asked in a constitutional amendment to help codify that in our Constitution. Because there was places in this state, Brownsville, Texas being one of them, where health care was being rationed because of the raft of frivolous lawsuits that were being filed against your physicians and your health care providers. Today you have access to some of the finest health care in the world because you wisely saw the importance of having a legal system in place that doesn't allow for oversuing. And the fourth principle, in standing on this great piece of property that belongs to a university that has changed so many lives, and so many lives in a powerful way. An economic generator because of the ability to give the students that go through this university that key that opens the door to the future for them. Principle 4 is the appropriately funded, accountable public school system. Because what that says to Caterpillar or Medtronic or this host of businesses that have picked up and moved their operations to the state of Texas, that there is a skilled workforce here. Medtronic, in the Bay, again, the Bay Area of California is not bad living. You know, right there in San Francisco Bay, I mean, it's pretty and it's a wonderful part of the world. In 2008, they no longer could justify staying there because of the burdensome cost that the California government had placed upon them. They picked up lock, stock, and barrel, 1,400 jobs, average salary $65,000 a year. These are people that have amazing medical technology. And they moved it to San Antonio, Texas. They didn't come to San Antonio if there was a question about, are we going to be able to fill the jobs with the technology-oriented minds that are required. They knew that. Those are the 4 principles. Then there's another important part of that, and it's for government then to get out of the way and let the private sector do what the private sector does best, which is create jobs. And you all are really blessed to have men and women in the Texas legislature that respect those 4 principles and work with us to help create that type of environment.